Hello and happy new year, happy 2019. Today is the first day of the year, my first video of the year, and I thought I would start it off with an annual favorites video. So the things that I've been loving in 2018. If you have not watched any of my previous videos or annual yearly favorites videos before, it's not where I talk about my holy grail products per se. It's more of a video where I talk about the things that I really discovered in the past year. Also, I'm going to do it a little bit different this year where I'm going to actually get ready, put some products on my face as we go through the list of the things that I discovered in 2018, which is why my hair is currently in this Aquis towel. This is probably a favorite of 2018. I discovered it in the last quarter of the year, and I've been using it every single day since, or all the days that I've washed my hair. And I really do find that it has really helped kind of wick out the moisture from my hair so that I can blow dry it a little bit easier. Anyway, let's just get started because I do have quite a few products in front of me. This is just a little taste of what we have going on. So I'm going to start with primers. I've been using primers for quite a while, and I have a couple of primers here that I've been really enjoying. The first one is the Tatcha Silk Canvas Primer, and I like this because it's just really easy. It feels a bit like skincare when you put it on. I also do find that a thin layer of this does help any makeup apply a little bit easier. So this I've been really loving. I've also been really enjoying the Indie Labs Nanoblur Color Corrector. As you guys can see, my skin has a lot of hyperpigmentation on it currently. I've also found that this, in conjunction with a base, has really helped make my skin look a little bit more even. I'm going to use the Tatcha Luminous Silk Primer today because I feel like I haven't used it in the last couple of Get Ready With Me, so I figured I would just try it out. So the next thing I'm going to go in the order of how I put makeup on my face. So the next thing is a base, and before I actually put on a foundation or a BB or a CC or tinted moisturizer, I've been really loving adding a layer of luminosity underneath first. So this is the Hollywood Flawless Filter from Charlotte Tilbury, and I've been really loving this ever since I picked it up kind of in the summer. And the only thing I don't like about it, of course, is the packaging. I really hate this doe foot applicator, but this I can actually get away with wearing alone. This is just a really great base to put on if you really want a nice glow. So I've been really loving it to wear alone or underneath makeup. The only thing is that it can kind of make your makeup not last as long as you want it to. And the reason I say that is because it is made to make your skin look super shiny, not shiny, but glowy and dewy. And the formulation is very slick. So if you do have combination skin like I do, putting this on before your foundation can not really do it any favors. So I do find that when I wear this, my base usually doesn't last as long throughout the day. I mean, it usually still lasts a good 8 hours, but if you're really going from like 7 to 10, like 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. this is not something that's gonna really work in your favor if you do have combination skin. How I combat that is I'll actually put maybe more of a long wearing or matte foundation on top of it, and the combination of this dewiness and then a matte foundation will really kind of mix together to create a beautiful satin finish. But I love it because while it doesn't give any coverage, it does kind of give your skin like a more even looking finish and also a really glowy finish. So in terms of an actual base, I think I bought more foundations and tinted moisturizers this past year than I have in a really long time. So I have actually quite a few to share with you guys. I did repurchase the Chantecaille Just Skin earlier this year, and as you guys know, this is like one of my favorite, actually my most favorite base. It doesn't give you full coverage, it gives you really nice sheer medium coverage, but I just love how it looks on the skin and it works really well for me. The other four that I have here that I picked up this past year that I've been really loving, one is the Sephora Bright Future Skin Tint. I think they're discontinuing this, but I actually really like this. It reminds me a lot of the Glossier Skin Tint, which I also have here. I like these because on the days where I'm not looking for too much coverage, but I just want like a really nice sheer base that I can throw on that still gives my skin a little bit more of an even finish without being too heavy. These are the two I've been really loving. If I'm looking for more of a medium coverage that still lasts well throughout the day, that works for my combination skin, I've been loving the Dior Backstage Face and Body Foundation. Like I said, a beautiful satin finish, and it works really well throughout the day. And then if I'm looking for a really full coverage, more of a matte finish, that will get me through like a 10-hour day, I've been loving the Coverfx Powerplay foundation. Sometimes I'll mix some bases together to come up with kind of a hybrid finish. Typically it's the Glossier skin tint that I will mix with literally anything because this is so fluid. Today I'm going to use the Dior Backstage foundation. I think between the four of these, this is the one I've been using the most because it's easy to apply, but it still gives my skin a really nice finish. The only thing I don't like about this is the packaging. Sometimes after shaking it, some of the product can squirt up and it's a bit messy. But you do get quite a bit of product with this foundation. You get half a fluid ounce or 0.6 of a fluid ounce more than your typical foundation. So for the price, I think you get pretty good value for your money. I do like applying this with my fingers, but it also works well with a beauty blender or a brush. I typically will apply it with my fingers and then I'll go over with a brush just to make sure that I don't have any product kicking up in areas. This is the Real Techniques Instapop brush. I use it just to kind of pat everything in. This is probably one of my favorites this past year also. I discovered these brushes probably in April when I was in the States very briefly for a little excursion in Niagara-on-the-Lake, and I've been loving this whole range. My favorite one, as you guys know, is the blush brush, but this has been a really nice brush for quick and easy bases. I forgot to do an honorable mention for the Wet n Wild Cushion Foundation. This is a great drugstore find. I just wish it would come to Canada, and I wish I had gotten a slightly lighter shade in it when I was in the States last month. So let's talk concealers. I picked up a couple of new concealers this past month. I'm still loving a lot of the old ones, like the NARS Soft Matte Complete Concealer. I love that for the face, not necessarily for under the eyes, but to spot conceal because it's a really nice matte, long wearing concealer for me. These three were kind of my most noteworthy concealers this past year. The Glossier Stretch Concealer, I really love this. It is a really emollient concealer, so this isn't really my most long wearing concealer, especially if I don't set it with a powder, but it's really easy to apply. It's really easy to reapply because it is such a soft emollient consistency. I also have the Cle de Peau concealer, which I've been really loving. I do find that this is very long wearing. It is a bit dry at first, so you have to have really well hydrated under eyes, but it does last all day on me. This one also works really well on the face, so like to cover up blemishes. It's not quite as dry as the NARS Soft Matte Complete Concealer, but it still does, you know, wear really well throughout the day. This one probably is my most favorite find this past year. It's a Too Faced Born This Way Multi-Use Sculpting Concealer. This is such a creamy emollient concealer, but I love this one because it really lasts well throughout the day and it's really easy to blend. So this is the one I'm going to wear today. You really only need a little bit of it. I think maybe that's even too much to get full coverage under the eyes, because I do find that if you apply too much, at least for me, it tends to crease in my under eye and kind of pool in like the fine lines that I have. So this is a really great concealer because one, it comes in a bunch of shades, so you can probably find the shade that best suits you. Two, it's very creamy, so it's easy to blend. And three, it actually lasts pretty well throughout the day, whether you powder it or not. I typically do powder my under eyes because I do find that I need that extra setting mechanism to keep my under eyes as concealed as possible. But if you do have, you know, typically drier skin, then you can probably get away with not powdering under the eyes and you will be fine. But I also don't find it to be drying, so it has a really nice satin finish. It doesn't dry down to the point where your under eyes feel really dry, so I do really like that finish. So in terms of powder, I only have two here. So one is something that I just recently repurchased, but it's one that I've loved very much in the past. It's the Too Faced Cocoa Powder Foundation. This is actually a discontinued product, so I feel bad even mentioning it, because if you ever wanted to try this, unfortunately you can't. I actually got this at a cosmetic store at the Toronto Premium Outlets. It is a really light, finely milled powder that I find that I can just put it all over the face, and it doesn't feel like an extra layer of foundation. It feels like a really nice finishing powder. I've also been really loving the Hourglass Diffused Light, which I've been using for under the eyes. This is in my project pan, which I'm going to be doing an update on very soon, but I love this for under the eyes because it's slightly tinted yellow, so it's a really nice brightener. I'm going to use both of these powders today, starting with the Hourglass Diffused Light under the eyes. I like to add like a really nice thin layer, just patting it in. This is the Real Techniques setting brush. So for the Too Faced Cocoa Powder Foundation, I've been using the buffing brush from Real Techniques. And I like this brush because it's dense, it's great for powder, especially if I'm layering powder over a cream base. I find that it works really well. And I just basically put it in my T-zone, because that's where I get to the oiliest throughout the day, and also just around my nose. So next is bronzer. Now I have two cream bronzers and two powder bronzers here. So the first two cream ones, one is the Bite Beauty Multi-Stick. You guys know I love these multi-sticks. I picked up Honeywheat, which is kind of a warm brown to use as a bronzer. And then I also have the Radiance Gel Bronzer from Chantecaille. This is a very light coverage bronzer, just a light bronzer in general. So it's one that I like to use obviously when I'm using all cream products. It's really warm. It really brings warmth to my skin, and I've been loving this finish. It's really easy to blend. And then the two powder bronzers, one is the Marc Jacobs Tan-Tastic Omega Bronze. So this is a huge bronzer. It's beautiful. It's like a really nice, it's like the perfect matte bronzer actually for my skin tone. Probably not great if you're a bit deeper than me, but if you are my skin tone or lighter, this is really nice. It doesn't lean orange, which is nice if you want a really nice neutral bronzer. I've also been really loving the Physicians Formula Butter Bronzer. So this I picked up this past year because I hear so much about it all the time, so I figured that I would give it a try. Even though I have a cold and my nose is a bit stuffy, I can still smell this and it smells great. It actually reminds me a little bit of the coconut smell from this bronzer. This one's a bit stronger though. I'm going to use a combination of these three bronzers just to try them. I'm going to first apply the Honeywheat bronzer. Like I said, I didn't powder my cheeks very much, so it should be fine to put over my base. I basically just put it almost in the contour areas of my face, and then I blend it out with a brush. So I'm going to use this brush from Real Techniques. It is the contour brush. I like the size of this, and also it is a synthetic brush, so it's really easy to blend out cream products with. This is our first layer of bronzer. So next I'm going to use the powder bronzers. Because I don't want to layer too much on my cheeks, I'm going to use butter bronzer on one side and the Omega Bronze Tan-Tastic on the other side. So I'm going to do the Tan-Tastic bronzer on this side. It's a nice warm looking bronzer. Honestly, these two bronzers are very similar, so it's really hard to justify all of this makeup, but at the same time they are slightly different. In case you are wondering, I picked up the deep bronzer from the Butter Bronzer line. They have like 3 or 4 shades. They look all super similar, and this deep shade is really not very deep. I might have applied a little too much on this side. In the event you over bronze, like I just did, I just take a brush, like a big heavy brush, and just try to buff it out a little. And if that doesn't work, you can always just add a little bit more bronzer on the other side to make it a little bit more even. So let's talk about blushes. As you guys know, I'm a sucker for blush, But I've actually been doing pretty well these past couple of years where I'm not buying too many blushes, because I still think that my biggest collection of makeup is blushes. But this past year, I think I mentioned it also last year, but I've been really loving the cloud paints from Glossier. I went through probably a period of 3 or 4 months where I was using cream products, so these were really great. I actually have all 6 of them now. I know I said for a while I wasn't going to pick up Puff because I didn't think it was my shade, but I tried it and I like it. So I do officially have all 6 shades, and I love these individually. I love mixing them together. So these have probably been my go-to blush. I also really loved the Chantecaille Cheek Gelée, which is the shade in Lively. Again, this is a lot sheerer than the Glossier Cloud Paints, but I think this is beautiful. It blends really nicely, and I love the color of this. And then the one powder blush I believe that I picked up this past year, I tried to look back at my past purchases, and I think this is the only blush item that I actually did buy, powder blush item. But this is the Butter Blush in Vintage Rouge. One of you recommended this to me and I've been really loving it. So this is the one I'm actually going to use today. I love this color of blush because it is almost like a neutral to me. So it's kind of a muted berry rose shade, and it has a little bit of a brown tinge to it, which is really nice to layer over bronzer. Sometimes blushes really don't pair very well with bronzer. It can make the bronzer look muddy, or vice versa, the bronzer can make the blush look muddy. But this is just a really beautiful shade. It has just enough of like that pinky red hue to it that it gives your cheeks a little bit more vibrancy without being too overpowering. So this is a really great everyday blush. So moving into the highlighters, I am still loving the Glossier Halo Scopes. Again, I now have the trifecta of them. I have all 3. My favorite is probably Moonstone, which is not the one I thought I would love the most, but I actually really love this kind of like opalescent hue. The other highlighter I've been really loving is the Coverfx what is this? The Perfect Light Highlighting Powder in Sunlight. Unfortunately, again, this is discontinued. I don't know why they discontinued this product because it is actually a really beautiful highlighter. Maybe they discontinued it because it's such a subtle highlighter, and I feel like that's not really most people's vibe these days. People want like a really blinding highlighter, but if you're like me and you like more subtle highlighters, this is the product to get if it were still available. Another one that's really nice, that's very similar to this, just in a different hue, is the Laura Mercier Baked Radiance 01 highlighter. So that one is also really nice if you want a really subtle highlighter. I like highlighter as much as the next person, but sometimes it's a little bit too blinding for me to wear, you know, day to day or at work. I don't really want like a really noticeable strip of highlighter. I do like a little bit more of a subtle sheen and glow rather than like a super metallic finish. So let's talk about eyes. This is probably my favorite primer this past year. This is the eyeshadow primer from Milani. It is, I think, the only one they have. This is in 01 Nude, but I don't think they have any other shades. I also did pick up the Pro Filter eye primer from Fenty Beauty, but I don't find that this lasts quite as well throughout the day as the Milani primer. And the price difference between these two is pretty great. This is only like 10 bucks and this is maybe $30-ish. So this is definitely a really great drugstore find. I do wish that it would come in a little bit more of a transparent color, I guess, because sometimes this color blends really nicely into my skin and sometimes it does not. So in terms of eye products, there's a few of them that I've been really loving. One is the Laura Mercier Caviar Stick, great cream eyeshadow. This is in the shade Copper. So very sparkly, so not necessarily day-to-day for me, but it's really nice for weekends or evenings. I definitely want to get a matte shade in this, and also I have on my shopping list for 2019 is the By Terry Cream Stick Shadows. Speaking of some cream shadows, I also really have been loving the Glossier Lid Stars. These are not for everyone. They're very sparkly, but if you really like an easy wash of color on the eye and you don't mind a bit of shimmer, summer, these are for you. My two favorite shades are Cub, which is a beautiful rose gold, and Fawn, which is kind of a taupey grayish. And then in terms of eyeshadow palettes, I didn't really go crazy with eyeshadow palettes this past year. One purchase that I've been really loving this past year is the Soft Glam palette from ABH. Now, I am not like a huge fancy eyeshadow wearer, so this is, despite the boring color story, it is, you know, a really great neutral palette for me. But I also really like the pops of like the rosy hues and the pinks and like the deep kind of auburn shades. The standout palette for me this past year though, although I've only had it for a few weeks, is the Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk Luxury Palette. This is my first quad from Charlotte Tilbury and I've been really loving it. I love the pinky hues. It's super easy to wear. The reason I love this is because all the shades that I would want is in one nice easy palette. It's easy to blend. It's like the perfect eye look for every day, but I can also spice it up a little bit by adding a bit more shimmer. So this is the palette I am going to use today. I will show you guys my signature kind of eye look when I use this palette. And yes, it's not super exciting, but like I said, it's a really nice, easy go-to palette for me. So I start by basically taking the lightest shade in here, and it is a bit of a shimmer, so it can be a little bit off-putting to put it all over the lid because that is maybe just not the typical eyeshadow look that people do. But I am so boring that I basically just follow the instructions that Charlotte Tilbury has laid out for me. So she has actually identified each of these shadows as your prime, your enhance, your smoke shadow, and also the pop. The use of this is obviously limitless. You can basically do whatever you want, but to make it easy for myself, I basically just follow that rule of thumb. So what I do is I just go through the shadows in the order that Charlotte recommends. This beautiful matte pink shade is super nice. When I first got this palette, I knew I loved the color story, but I really didn't think I was gonna wear it pretty regularly. But I wore it for probably 2 weeks straight, which is pretty impressive for me, especially since I, have to run off to work every day or on the weekdays. So I never really take the time to do my eyeshadow. But when I got this palette, I really tried my best to make the time in the morning to put it on because I just loved how it looks. So I'm using the smoke shade now, just putting it kind of in the outer corner, blending it in. And I'm also going to add a bit of that pop shade, just in the center. So in terms of mascara, I have been loving two of them. So one is the Glossier Lash Slick, and then the other one is the Shoot Mora Petal Lash. And I've been using the Glossier Lash Slick more for every day. The Shoot Mora Petal Lash I like to use when I'm going somewhere maybe special because it's a little bit harder to take off in the evening, even with a really great makeup remover. And this one is super easy to remove. I feel like the drier this gets, the less definition you get when you use it, but like I said, it's so easy to apply, and I just love the natural look that it gives my lashes, but it also does define them a little bit. For me personally, I would sacrifice a super full clumpy looking lash for something that gives me a bit of definition and lasts all day long without smudging. So this is that mascara for me. It's definitely not going to be for everyone, but if you are like me and you just like a simple looking lash that doesn't smudge throughout the day, then this is the one for you. So for lipstick, I have been using the same lipstick for the past like 3 or 4 months because of my project pan. But when I had to think of the best lipstick find or lip product find this past year, that's not your lip balm, but actually a color product, it has to be the Lancome L'Absolut lacquer. And this is in the shade 216, and I think it's called Rose Story. This is, like I said, my favorite lipstick find. I wore it all throughout the summer. To me, this is a very, summer color because it's like a beautiful rosy pink. It's very bright. And I love the glossy finish that this gives, but it also dries down to like a really nice satin finish. And I love the color of this. It's super easy to apply. So this is my finished makeup look. I do have to blow dry my hair, so I will be right back and we'll talk about some beauty tools that I've been loving. As I was blow drying my hair, I realized that I forgot to mention my brow product of choice this past year. So I actually haven't been using anything other than brow gel for most of the year. So the two of them that I've been loving, still pretty much the same. The Essence Make Me Brow, great drugstore find, and the Glossier Boy Brow. So I've been kind of leaning more towards the Glossier Boy Brow just because it does give a little bit more hold than the Essence Make Me Brow, but in terms of tint, I feel like they're the same. But the reason I haven't been putting too many things in my brows is because I have been really trying to go get my brows done regularly. My brows are naturally pretty full. They are a little bit more sparse in the front, but they are relatively full. So I have been trying to get them just done a little bit more regularly to get the shape really nice, but that means I haven't really had the need to fill them in. Before I end this video, I want to talk about some beauty tools I've been really loving. So for my hair, I didn't mention this last year, even though I got this in 2017, but I have been really loving the Dyson hair dryer. I have used it pretty much every single time I have washed my hair this past year in 2018, and I love it. It works beautifully. The trick with this is really just to moderate the heat and the airflow. Some people think, okay, highest heat, highest airflow, I'll get my hair drier quicker, but this is really powerful, so it dries your hair so well that if you do go the highest heat and airflow, it will dry your hair before you actually get a chance to style it the way you like. So the key is to start low heat, low airflow, and then work your way up, because again, it just is very powerful. So if you go all in, you won't be happy with the results that you get. I also am still loving the Daphne hair straightener, which I mentioned in my 2017 favorites video, but I don't use this regularly, but on the second day hair or on a day where my hair is just being really unruly, I will put my hair through this, and it just helps tame any flyaways and just makes my hair look a little bit more straight. The last thing I wanted to mention before we end this video is my favorite nail polish find of 2018, and it definitely has to be the Treat Love and Color Strengthener Polishes from Essie. I did a video on this and I will link it up here if you have not seen it yet, but I love these polishes. The colors are beautiful. I'm wearing one of them today. I can't remember which one this is, but it's like a creamy pinky white color. I do find that they do strengthen my nails when I do wear them, and like I said, they're super easy to apply. Some of them are more streaky than others, but I love the finish, the cream polishes especially, and I also love the slight benefits that it has had to my nails. So those were my favorites for 2018. I know this is a bit of a longer video because I tried to combine two things into one where we chat about my favorites and also you got to see some of them applied. If you want to check out some of my favorites in the past, I will link a bunch of them below. I think I have 5 or 6 years of them that you can binge if you're interested. Before you leave, you'll have to let me know what your favorite products were in 2018. If you can narrow it down to 5, I would love to hear it. Or you can just leave me a slew of your recommendations of things that I should check out. But I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. Again, Happy New Year. I hope you guys are having an amazing start to the year, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.